Welcome to Friendship Friday. My name is Mark Long, rector of the parish of St Andrew in Newlands, Cape Town. Today, unbelievably, is the last Friday in July. We're already a month into the second half of the year. I don't know what your experience has been over the last 4 months of lockdown, but I have found the time seems to have moved much quicker. And that's perhaps because some of the normal boundaries and spaces that our pre-COVID lifestyle, or my pre-COVID lifestyle, included. But in the midst of this journey, I continue to be really thankful for God's presence and the strength that I'm able to draw from my relationship with God. I'd like to share today just briefly around 2 verses in Psalm 16, verses 8 and 9. Psalm 16 is a psalm that speaks of an intimate relationship between the writer and God. It begins with the words, "You are my Lord." And the psalmist goes on to reflect on what that means in terms of just daily life and experience. But verses 8 and 9, the psalmist says the following: "I keep the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand, I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad and my soul rejoices, my body also rests secure." Now, in terms of these 2 verses, particularly verse 9, there's a real link between our heart, our soul, and our body. The psalmist is saying, my heart is glad, my emotions, almost my psychological being is in a good place. And all that I am, my soul rejoices in this relationship and in the joy of life. And having said that, goes on to say, my body also rests secure. And a wonderful reminder that we're not just heart or mind or soul or body, that we're connected. We're an integral whole in terms of who we are. And that's what's going on in our emotional life impacts on our physical existence. And certainly I would say for myself over these last 4 months, there's been a lot going on in my heart. There's a lot that's gone through my thoughts, and my body feels impacted by that. And what's so lovely about this verse is the psalmist reflecting that gladness, that rejoicing that's going on internally is experienced by the body, and the body rests secure. One of the huge challenges of this period of lockdown, of course, is the lack of physical touch and connection that we have with each other. One's so used to, when meeting someone new, putting out a hand and shaking it or being shaken by it. Someone that one knows and loves, a hug can be deeply meaningful. And I think we're all feeling a little bit lost on that level. I bumped into someone the other day in the street as I went off for a cycle, and she said, "It's so good to see you, let me look at you." And I found that hugely affirming, actually, affirming of my physical existence, which so often in the context of talking on a screen and seeing people spaced around a screen, one loses that sense of our physical presence in this world. And so much one begins to realize of human interaction is not just talk, it's not just visual, it is including our touch. And those are important aspects that we're missing, and kind of our bodies perhaps are not quite as much at rest as they should be, because we're starved of that contact. And as we begin to move forward, as we begin to think perhaps about reopening church for services and things, part of it is just that we want to be together. Part of my fear of opening up for services is that we may so want to be together that we're going to start hugging and touching again, and the danger of passing the virus on becomes much higher in that context. But important that we find that space. I'm probably driving you all mad by my references to Patrick O'Tuma, Irish poet and theologian, but I've really enjoyed both the prayers that I've discovered in his book of daily prayers, but also reading at the moment his book In the Shelter, Finding a Home in the World. And I came across this comment by Patrick about hugs, and if I could read that to you. One Irish way of saying hug, and he uses the Irish phraseology, means to squeeze somebody with your heart. I thought that was a lovely image. He goes on to say, it's lovely, but I never knew it. That first time I was asked for a hug and I got one, even though I didn't know I had one to either give or take, I found myself thinking, so this is what arms are for. And so I wonder, as we just reflect on where we are in our journey, I wonder what your arms have been up to. What have your hands been up to? Because they've missed that primary purpose, as Patrick mentions here. Hugs are there, arms are there for hugging. And so I do ask that we perhaps just think about how going forward we can find ways to meaningfully hug without the physical component, without passing on the virus by getting too close to one another. And I think in terms of just ways in which we can show concern for each other, there are ways that we can give hugs that are virtual. They're not as good as the real thing, but perhaps just to acknowledge our own real lack and hunger for that contact once again. And to be inviting God to just show us ways that we can be caring and give a spiritual hug, a virtual hug to family and to friends that we're not in physical presence of at the moment. And to know that somehow in all of this, God is working. And as difficult as we perhaps are finding the journey on this level, that we move forward and that there will be opportunities ahead once again to relate to each other in ways that we've known before. We will need to continue to be careful, and we need to be continuously aware and hyper aware in terms of just dealing with this particular virus, but also just in passing on other diseases along the way. Maybe we will be more considerate of each other in the future on that level. But if you're missing, acknowledge. I think that's part of it. When we pretend that we're okay, we miss out on a lot. And often just expressing that need or that frustration or whatever it may be about lacking physical contact. It's in the acknowledgement that we can begin to move forward with it. We can begin to talk about it. We can begin to share. And so to discover and plot a new way forward together. So I pray that somehow what's in your heart, what's in your mind, that your body may experience that too. And that at this time, like the psalmist, we may be able to draw very deeply on our relationship with God in giving us the strength and the perseverance to cope with the changes of this time. And in doing that, so to rediscover a deep sense of peace that is not just experienced in heart and mind or soul, but is experienced in our bodies as well.